His teacher was paralysis. Her teacher was addiction. With love, they found each other. You are here now for the Conscious Couple podcast.
And look at his face as we start this brand new episode.
Because
Once
I
again,
think I displayed my displeasure on the last one in the amount of time it takes people for us to actually set this all up and do what we are doing right now is entirely too long. So,
we'll
but
get better.
We're not studio engineers.
We'll get better. And listen, look what we did. We were so frustrated. Our producer was so frustrated by the lack of being able to hear him, which who would have thought? Who would have thought?
I think it was sabotage.
I still think you could talk a little closer to
Sabotage.
it. Remember
No,
the wisdom he told you. It's
the
not how
wisdom
loud you
of a
speak, it's
19-year-old.
the direction your voice
I'm
is
talking
going. So
directly
keep the
into it.
direction. This is
I will
people,
do
this is
my
what we
devil
go through.
voice. I will.
Every single
It was
day. This
sabotage.
is our lives.
I was
This you're seeing
sabotage.
it
Murphy
like in
is
real
even
life.
growling
This
at
is
you.
what happens. We just talk at each other. And
Murphy's
nothing
growling
gets
at you
solved.
right now.
Murphy's
And
talking.
these poor
I'm
people,
talking.
this
he's talking.
are into our lives, into our living room. This is exactly what goes on.
This is what this podcast is about. We are welcoming you into our welcoming you into our living room to have a conversation with us. That's what this podcast is all about.
The only problem is I only hear two voices, and they're both annoying. Your voice and my voice, and they're both extremely annoying.
All right. Well, this episode, we decided to totally flip the switch from what we have been talking about and go to a completely different subject, but equally as important, equally as transformative, equally, if not more challenging. It's one thing to heal your sex life. It's another thing to be a conscious parent, which is what we're talking about today, which I think, honestly, is probably one of the hardest challenges, awakenings, openings in our life is through our kids.
Yeah, sure, I guess. I mean,
if you're open to the invitation, parenting's hard in and of itself, but when you decide to start opening the door to conscious parenting, which is what this episode's going to be about, I have been challenged on this deepest levels of my soul when it has come to parenting and conscious parenting.
all right, so I'll open
parenting
this.
myself.
I'll open the dialogue.
Oh, we're just now opening
So
it,
I'm
like
gonna ask
5
you-
minutes into it.
You said it's not. It's only 3 minutes.
Oh.
You said, the biggest challenge or whatever. I don't know what you just said, but
He doesn't.
well,
actually
because I heard
listen.
it and I had the idea in my head, and then you kept talking, and then the idea got chased away because it was scared. So, yeah, you have this challenge of awakening and being this conscious parent. What do you mean by that?
Oh, right. So that's a great place to start, right? What is the theme of today's conscious parenting? But what we want to walk you through, first of all, is what is it? Like, what does conscious parenting mean? So we're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about how we try to practice that in our own lives.
Yes.
And then
I'll be honest, I don't know if I know what it means. I just do what I do.
Right. Well, and then we're going to talk about what they can do, the listeners, to try to practice some of this in their own life, practice conscious parenting and what that looks like. So
let me ask you, what is unconscious parenting?
Unconscious parenting is parenting while you still have not healed your inner child.
All right. So that's fancy. So in other words, you haven't grown yourself yet, and
yeah, so all your ego, all your unhealed shadows in yourself are played out through your child, basically, is what unconscious parenting is about. And I'll just start it off with saying...
So is this a thing as if, you wanted to be a great baseball player, and now you have this son, and you want him to continue that role and live through his journey?
Absolutely. It's unconscious parenting is about control. It's about living out your own crap on your kids, thinking that it's about them, believing it's about them when it doesn't have anything to do with them. It's about a hierarchical system, like I am the authority and you are beneath me, instead of a relationship between two souls.
Okay. All right.
It is a letting go of any part of your own ego that comes alive in parenting. Okay. So for me, I'll just start with saying this journey started for me 6-7 years ago when I saw, and I'm going to talk about her a lot on this episode, but when I saw Dr. Shefali on a Super Soul Sunday.
That's Oprah. It is, isn't it?
That is Oprah. Yeah. Oh, I thought I said Oprah.
Very, very proud of myself for knowing that.
Yeah. And really speaking it into.
I'm speaking it loud and clear because I've been scolded so many times that I am stupid for not talking into the mic in the correct direction right. And with the correct pronunciation.
That's right. You're finally learning, honey. I'm proud of you. I'm very proud of you.
I'm a rebel.
So Dr. Shefali has spearheaded the conscious parenting movement. In fact, I don't know if there's anybody else out there really talking about conscious parenting because nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, it's scary.
It's so get lynched. Scary. Yeah. And the funny thing is she used to say, because she was a family therapist, and she used to say, people bring me their kids. They bring me into their room and they're like, okay, I need you to fix my kids. And they don't like it when I tell them it has nothing to do with your kid. We need to fix you.
It is kind of like a dog situation.
It is. Same thing. Like it doesn't have, and a lot of parents don't like to hear that, right? They want to hear their kid's a problem, not them. And so for me, when she was talking about this stuff, the reason why it hit so much, number one, is because she was saying things that I'd never heard before, right? So anytime you learn something new that's kind of outlandish and outrageous, you're like, whoa, this is worth listening to. And number two, because my most amazing daughter that teaches me so much in this life, she was like 5-6 years old at the time. And I always thought since she was little, like maybe something was wrong, like maybe she was on the spectrum or maybe something, because she would just have these fits, like not just like typical 2-year-old fits, but like fits, like you couldn't change things. Like she would just break down, and it was like, what is this? And I remember Shefali talking about the black sheep kid in the family, like the one that everyone thinks has the issues, but actually she is taking in, or they are taking in, the energy of the entire household. And so for me, I was like, oh, like maybe she's actually trying to tell me something. And maybe she's, she didn't see this dysfunction, but maybe she can feel it. Maybe she's feeling that. And so all of these chemicals are going through and she doesn't know how to express that. And so for me, that was just like oh, wow. It was because through my daughter, it made a lot of sense. And then, learning what I learned throughout my spiritual journey, just about the first 7 years of our lives and how much our identity is created in those first 7 years, and not just in the first 7 years, but even in the womb. And I think about, with my son, I was 19 when I was pregnant with my son. It was a very easy pregnancy. His dad and I had we never fought. It was like super chill, very relaxed. And he was very relaxed, easy kid, like, just so easy, just a really, to this day, very easy. And then I thought about my daughter, and during my pregnancy with her, there was a lot of fighting, a lot of stress hormones, a lot of fear. And of course, those chemicals, when they're in the womb, affect them. And I believe they do to this day with her. So that was what opened the door for me with conscious parenting. And Dr. Shefali was like, oh, I think that there's something that's resonating here with my daughter and my own relationship with her. And so I continued to follow her. She's got books, and read her books and just study and practice more and more and more and more. And what I have come to learn, since you asked, is conscious parenting is kind of twofold. It's about learning how to reparent our own inner child, and then allowing every opportunity that comes up with your own child to take a look at what is not healed from within you, and letting go of control. And some people think this means like, oh, then you just let your child do whatever they want. And it's not that at all. There are definitely boundaries, but there's boundaries within a framework that is, it's empowering for both parties. It's empowering for the child and for the adult. And then there's connection. Like, then there's actual connection from a soul to soul, not like, oh, you are my child, so you are going to be this way, or you're, owning them. Basically, like, conscious parenting is like a conscious couple, like a conscious relationship. Like, I don't own you. I don't own your experience. I don't own what is right for you.
But I do own you.
You do very well know by now that that is so far.
I don't? I thought I did.
From the truth. So conscious...
This is an awakening in itself, because I'm sure I owned you.
Are you having an awakening as we're speaking right here,
awakening
right now?
of I thought I owned you.
Yeah.
I can't.
Sorry. I'm sorry to...
Okay. All right.
Take that.
I understand now.
Yeah. Does it make sense now?
It totally makes sense.
Good.
Yes.
I'm glad that we have finally cleared this up.
Yes.
In front of all of our amazing listeners.
There we are.
Do we still have you? Are you still there, or have we completely lost you?
No, they're there.
Okay. All right. You're still there.
Waiting.
So, conscious parenting for me, I'm going to tell you what it is for me, and then you share what it is for you, or what your...
Sure.
We can look at it as like, as you ascend or descend down the road of spiritual awakening or growing, personal growth, just growing as a human, growing as a soul. Of course, this is going to spill over into all areas of your life. How you eat, how you spend your free time, how you parent, like, it's going to spill over into other areas of your life. It has to. It can't not, because it's who you become. So for me, conscious parenting has been about letting go of, number one, letting go of control, meaning not trying to own what they do or who they become in their life, and not letting my own ego. So like, oh, we need our kids to have all these accolades, and we need them to be in all these sports, and we need them to get straight A's in school, so then we can feel like we have done something with our own lives, which means every single time we do that, it means you are not actually seeing your child for who they are as a human being and as a soul. You're seeing them through the lens of making you feel worthy. And that's what unconscious parenting is about, is basically using your children for you to feel better about yourself. Mm-hmm. That's ultimately what unconscious parenting is, and thinking that you own their experience, thinking that just because you may be older, that you know the way that they should do things, instead of opening the space and the self-trust in them to say, you're going to have to find your way, and I'm going to have to let you do that. And that may mean suffering and pain. That may mean suffering and pain for your children to go through, which is near impossible as a parent, and yet so completely necessary for their own growth. As we know, our own growth comes from pain and suffering, not from everything being okay.
And if I can jump in here.
Finally.
So, I heard Tony Robbins talking about this, and it's so true. When you are born from comfort, you tend to get comfortable. And when you're born from hardship, you tend to get strong. And in my generation of, growing up in the late 70s and into the 80s, it was, both parents worked, had to kind of fend for yourself, you made your own meals. And it wasn't even like there was a big sit down and, my stepmom said, oh, well, you're going to have to make your own meals and do all that. We just did it. You wanted food, you figured it out. It would let you know if you didn't shower, which sometimes in the summer, I was in the pool all day, so I didn't think I had to. I thought that was the communal bathtub, but apparently it wasn't, because I was told I was stinky. But in growing up in that and learning to do for yourself, and growing up with my mom and that was there to take care of us, but couldn't really take care of herself because she was going through her thing too. So looking back at that upbringing. I am so proud of that. And not just proud for me to, do for myself and my brother and my sister to be able to do for ourselves, but really proud of my parents, even though it was really hard. It was a really, really difficult time in their lives, in their journey, and they went through what they had to go through to become better people, because they ultimately became much, much better people, which made them much, much better parents. And going through hard things makes us stronger. And I watched, when, my ex-wife and I were bringing up our kids, we saw people that would just do everything for their kids. I mean, everything, their homework, all of it. And it just didn't make sense to me. It's like you're robbing them of failure. And, both my ex-wife and me, we learned from failure. We learned by doing it yourself. And that failure, it's just another way of doing it. And you have to decide, now what? Do I just lay on the carpet and cry for a week, or do I get up and try it again? So it didn't work, so let's try it. Let's try something different. It's a problem solving. Whereas I think we are so afraid to fail. We've made this terminology in this culture that is so afraid to fail that when you do fail, it's somebody else's fault.
Or feelings getting hurt.
Yeah, feelings getting hurt. It's somebody else's fault. Where I've never, ever agreed with that, ever, because it never came into my reality. It really didn't. You wanted something, you go get it, right? And maybe that is my generation. I am extremely proud of my children because they learned, I think probably at a pretty young age, that they could change their own emotions. And, my ex and I really worked well together with that in bringing that, instilling that sense of self into them. But even today, watching some of the culture out there of and again, I only see what I see, right? It's my little perception. But when I see people blaming someone else for the feelings that they feel, I understand that there's things behind that, but you are responsible for your own feelings. It's just, it is. And if we could all just be responsible for the feelings that we feel, well, then it would give us the strength that we need to become great, because comfort does have a tendency to make us extremely soft. And when you're soft, everything hurts you. Yes? Agreed?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's no growth that can happen. It's not even being soft. It's just there's no expansion. Yeah. There's no growth that can happen when you
can't self-soothe yourself.
Yeah, when you're so terrified of, like you said, either failure. But here's the thing that, when I say what is conscious parenting, it is like when you say, people rob their kids, you rob your child of growth, of expansion, of figuring out their own soul's purpose and connecting with that when you try to keep them from any pain whatsoever. We think that we're being better parents because the only reason why is because we're uncomfortable ourselves with our own pain, with our own metamorphosis process. We're uncomfortable with that. So when you can start as a sovereign being comfortable with your own failure, and I don't like to use the word failure because I don't believe in failures ever. I don't believe anything is ever a failure, ever, literally nothing, because it's all growth. It's all expansion. Everything that turns out the way it turns out is because it was supposed to in order for us to grow. I remember Isiah, my son, telling a story about a podcast he had listened to one time, and this guy was an influencer, and he was talking about how he grew up super poor, like they had no money, And he was like, you know what? Like, this is going to drive me to create such an amazing life, so I don't have to live this. And he worked his ass off, and he created wealth. He created success. He created happiness, because as we know, it's not just about wealth at all. In fact, very little of it is. And he, ended up having kids. And because he grew up poor, he didn't want that for his kids. So he gave his kids everything. And he was like, basically, he realized that because he did that, he robbed his kids of that experience of finding that drive from within them to go find their own thing, whatever resonated with them, whatever they found in their soul to do. And it's kind of like the saying, we talk about, Shefali talks about this a lot, unconditional love for your child. You don't love your child unconditionally. You don't. Like you do not love, because you don't know how to love yourself unconditionally. And so there's the condition, right? Unconditionally means no condition. And it's just not true. Not until you can learn to love yourself unconditionally can you extend that to your child. Because how many times have you felt disappointed, or you felt like, well, they're not my kid, or those things, because they weren't living up to what you thought were your expectations, what you thought that the life that they should be living. And, we've talked about it before, like, could you be okay with, maybe not happy about, but could you be okay with and still stand by your child if they decided to drive a dump truck or work at McDonald's for the rest of their life?
Or a shit sucker.
Or a shit sucker. Like, if they were like, this is what is in alignment for me. This is okay. Like, the reason why it's conscious parenting is because, and then I have to dig deep within myself in that moment and go, what is it in me that is not acceptance of that? What is it in me that I am not accepting, that I am being judgmental of myself for, that I can't go, you know what? Your life. And you're going to have to find that road, and you're going to have to find that path. And I'm not going to stand in your way, because I know if I stand in your way, then all it's doing is robbing you of your own growth, your own connection to your soul. That's it. But that takes constantly looking at ourselves. That takes constantly going, why do I think I need something from my child? Because when you need something from your child, you are using them. You are using them for your own feelings, to feel good, to feel worthy, to feel wanted, all of those things, which has nothing to do with your kid. It has nothing to do with actually seeing your kid for who they are. Like, remember we talked about this on one episode, but it's so kind of profound, which is worry is a form of control. Worry is a form of control. And so what does that mean? That means when you are worried, I get it. We're human beings. We're parents. Of course, we want the best for our children. It's what, it's our instincts. It's what drives us to be parents. Of course, we want them to be okay. But when you are excessively worrying, it means you are taking your power away from your children. It means you are saying, I don't trust you to be able to handle this on your own, which if you're telling your kid that, guess what is birthed from that? Don't trust yourself. Don't trust yourself, trust me, which then perpetuates this entire cycle of, well, I better trust authority and never question authority and never trust myself, never trust my own instincts, never trust my own voice. I'm going to be programmed to listen to everybody else's except for mine, which, is what happened in my case. So what does conscious parenting mean to you? Because you're very quiet over there. I'm
very quiet. I'm extremely quiet. I'm totally quiet. I like the quiet. I really do. Well, you know what? I think it's...
Why don't you talk about the journey you've had with this?
Well, I think
and be open and vulnerable.
Well, I think so. I have three. I have my oldest is now 22. Oh my God, he's 22. And then I have a 19-year-old boy, and I have almost an 18-year-old daughter. And I will say, the one thing I wanted to be in life was a dad. I just loved kids because they were so real and honest and fun. Kids were fun.
Hey guys, once again, this ad is sponsored by me. Yay. So in this video, in this week's episode, we talk a lot about conscious parenting and what that means and how we can be the best conscious parent and the best conscious self. And part of that is, especially as a mom and a female, is learning how to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Learning and applying the importance of if you aren't okay, then nobody else around you is going to be okay. So in honor of that, I do a free breathwork ceremony once a month that helps you to get a taste of what it feels like to use the power of your own breath to create different states. And this month's theme, since it's going to be Valentine's Day, is about falling in love with yourself. It's totally free. It's an hour and a half, and it will help you really refuel, recharge, and fall in love with yourself a little bit along the way. So the link to register will be in the comments. It's on February 12th. It's, like I said, only like 90 minutes, and it's a really great way for you to do something for you to recharge, for you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Put a sign on the door, tell your kids, tell your husbands, tell your pets that this is your time. This 90 minutes is dedicated to you, your own Valentine's Day present to yourself. So go ahead, even though it's free, you have to register. The registration link is in the comments below, and give yourself your own treat, your own, like I said, recharge, refuel, and do this for you. I will see you on Sunday, February 12th.
They knew how to laugh. And, I'd seen so many adults even growing up, and they were just so unhappy. So I knew I wanted to have kids in the worst way, and that's really what I wanted. I wanted boy, boy, girl. That was the combination. Of course, that's what we had. And for my sons, leaving a relationship, obviously, you leave a lot. It's not just a relationship anymore. And I had gotten to the point in my life where I wanted to be happy. I really wanted to be happy. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be, and not free in the way of, I just wanted to be free in the way of going after the life that I wanted. And in being involved in a tragedy, that hits hard, because when you start seeing friends and your parents, they all start to, their lives turn, they move on, they die, it sparks that. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was so unhappy, and I just wanted to be happy, and I knew I couldn't do it there with the person there. So, leaving my kids was the hardest thing probably I've ever had to do, ever. And, with my boys, I remember really having the conversation with them. Listen, you have to do you. You have to do you. You have to go out. You're not going to follow in my footsteps.
You got to quit looking at me.
You got to follow in your own footsteps. You have to find what makes your clock tick. Don't do what I did, because I didn't do what my dad did. I found where my passion was, and I went after it. And again, if that's driving a garbage truck, I don't care, because if at the end of the day you can come home and you can say, I am happy in myself, I am fulfilled with myself. I said, because if you are looking for somebody else to make you feel appreciated, to make you feel happy, that's going to be a lonely ride. And again, we take from our own experience, and I was able to share that with them. And, I'm sure there were times where I remember when my oldest, he went to college first year, and he took this course because he thought, oh, this is what my major is going to be. I didn't understand it, because there was nothing like that when it was cyber forensics or something. And I said, oh, okay. And he called up and he said, all right, I think I'm done here. I'm going to quit. And I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about it. And so he left, and he went back home, and we said, okay, let's go skiing. So we went to Whistler. The three of us went to Whistler skiing, and we were in a gondola, just my son and I, and there was a couple in front of us, older. And the guy says, it's a little late for winter break, isn't it? Because I think it was February or something. And I said, oh, what, him? Oh, no, he left. He quit. And And they both looked at me like, oh my God, you poor guy, that your son has disappointed you, right? And they're going on I think they said their daughter was in school. That's what brought up the whole conversation. And I said he was. And then they said, oh, well, it's, winter break or whatever. And I said, well, tell him. And he said, I didn't fit. And when he said that, and he's confident, and when he said, well, I just didn't fit with what my major was, and I just wasn't ready, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I was so proud of him in that moment. I swear to God, I was just like, yeah. Because I could see the look on those people's faces like disappointment. Oh, how could you do that? That foolish child, he doesn't know enough to leave that. And I'm like, oh yeah, he does. And he did leave. It was a school in Pennsylvania, a college. Left everything. He then went out to another school, University of Wyoming, where he is now. And this kid could teach people how to be happy now. He has changed. So I am so beyond proud of my kids. And to see the change in this kid is just absolutely amazing, because he did it. He owned every second of it. He was really sad. He was depressed. He was first year out in college in Wyoming, struggling. And I said, this is going to make you stronger. This is going to make you stronger. This is going to make you stronger. Now you know what you don't want. What do you want? That kid has probably lost, oh my God, he's probably lost 80 pounds of weight. He's a stud. He's got bigger legs than I do, which is almost impossible. And in a great relationship, he's like the king of his town. And Laramie, Wyoming has become his home. He calls it Laradice. And I'm so proud of that. And I tell him when he says, yep, I'm in the gym and I'm doing legs. And I said, you know what, dude? You've inspired me. I'm going to go up into the gym and I'm going to go on the rower. I'm going to do the elliptical. I'm going to lift some weights, because you are inspiring me now to be great. And I've watched every one of my kids do that. And I'm so incredibly proud that obviously it wasn't a one-person job. Obviously it was, their mother too, of giving them the opportunity to fucking fail, to go through hard things and to figure it out, not know how it's going to get paid for and then get a job to pay for it, to find their own road. That to me, I am so incredibly proud of. And it's been the struggle because, of course, I have guilt, because I come from a culture, I guess, a society in which I left my kids. Now, my daughter, I think, was 13. And, I remember when we were moving to Florida, and I thought, there is no way I'm going to move anywhere out of, her, away from her, before she graduated high school. There was just no way. And then the world shut down. And we're in Florida, and we're kind of stuck in Florida. And that really changed the dynamic. And, we have for me, it's just overcoming this guilt of leaving. And it's mostly pointed towards her. That's my baby, But I think I've let them teach me. I really have, because I feel like I need to be there on their hip. My daughter, I need to be there on her hip so she knows I am with her all the time, that I think about her, oh my God, all the time. But she is a strong, very independent woman now. And again, I just could not be more proud. And I'm more proud, and I'm very proud of my other two kids, watching them go through so much, but the strength that has been built in them. And, I have to say, because even I, moving away, a mom moving away from your daughter, and as a person who gets to watch that relationship, even from day one when you moved away, and to see how both of you have fit into this relationship, which I got to be honest, is the most beautiful mother-daughter relationship, because you have had to learn to listen to her.
To be present.
You had to sit there and just listen to her melt down and say, honey, I get it. And just let her, and then it was miraculous. She would come out of these fits and come out of it. And she has grown so much from that. And again, I'm just so proud of all of them. And honest to God, I think they teach me how to be better. I mean, honestly. So for me, it's conscious parenting is allowing your kids to be who they are and not interfere with them and not dictate you going to college and you're going to get a degree. And dude, if you want to do that, well, we got to figure out how we're going to do it, right? And, you're going to have skin in the game. I'm not footing the bill. Nobody's going to foot the bill for you. You have to have skin in the game, because if you don't have skin in the game, you're going to take it for granted. So there has to be a cost to you.
Yeah.
Right? And just going down that road and letting them make their own mistakes and picking themselves up after them.
Yeah. I think that is a perfect, like one of the perfect aspects of what describes conscious parenting. Like that's a really huge aspect, is allowing them to be in that pain without trying to take it away from them or trying to keep them from it. I remember I actually did a one-on-one session with Shefali, and at the time, my daughter was going through this, like she would want me to find the answer to something, and I would get frustrated and I couldn't find it. Like example was Minecraft. She couldn't figure out how to log in.
Always the Minecraft.
I know, it's always Minecraft. She's getting angry and I'm getting frustrated because I can't figure it out. And then it just would turn into like this just complete meltdown on both of us. And so I ended up booking a session with Shefali, and I remember her telling me, and I didn't fully understand it until actually just in Utah, but she said, your daughter does not want you to find the answer for her. That's not why she's crying and throwing a fit. She may be saying that to you, but she doesn't want you to find the answer. She just wants you to be present with her in the messiness. She doesn't want you to fix it. She doesn't want you to solve her problem. She just wants to know that it's okay and that you're right there in the messiness, in the yuckiness with her. That's it. And I remember at the time thinking, because I'm such a problem solver anyway, that comes really natural to me. Like I'm very logically, I think very logically. I think very like these are easy problems to solve. I'm very patient. So that was hard for me to like understand, which is, goes back to like this feminine aspect of just allowing the messiness to happen and not needing to solve their problems or not needing to fix whatever pain they're in. And really it was, I had grown with that, but really in the last couple months, I had realized, like he said, and this is going to be just, by the way, a 2-part series, because next episode, Isiah, our son, is going to come on with us, and he's going to talk about his perspective as, this journey has affected him in the last 5 years, because I moved away from my kids 5 years ago. I moved actually across the country from them, and hard thing to do. And we'll talk about that more in detail on the next episode. But, I kind of forget where I was going with that, but really just in the last couple months, I've realized, even in the last 5 years, like Scott said, we would always talk about this, like, how many parent-children relationships I see that live with their kids and yet have no relation, like they might as well be on different planets. Well, because
the one thing that hit me was with Isiah, and we'll have this conversation with him, when the words came out of his mouth to you, you ruined my life. You ruined my life. And I have been a part of families where, a daughter or a son has said to their parent who they live with every single day, you've ruined my life, right? So, but this was a real tangible thing where you could say, maybe I did, maybe I did. And, obviously, the conviction that you have is really remarkable, because even I would be like, ooh, yeah, what do we do? And she's like, no, it's going to be okay. We're going to talk about this, and it's going to make us all stronger. And I'm not going to speak for the lad, but
he'll be speaking for
it's
himself.
it's pretty remarkable to see how, because there we were in this gigantic house in Chalfont, Pennsylvania, and we lived in this 12 by 15 bedroom with green sponge paint and this horrible sports border that went around, and we would just sit there and cry. And what have we done, and what do we want? Because there was no denying what this was. She could not deny it. I could not deny it. There was a strength, a power, a draw between us that it really was. It was two magnets that were so powerful you could not pry them apart. It was that hard of a draw. And it happened instantaneously when we really first kind of met. So it was this, how do we, knowing what we know, how do we paint this picture of where we want this to be 5 years from now?
Yeah.
And I think it really brought us to having everybody together and having this family of, sorts, and kind of like a Brady Bunch thing where we would get together, a couple weeks a year, whatever, and to spend time and learning each other and trying to figure each other out and trying to understand what is happening in your world. And, it forces you to go inside. It forces you, each one of us forced us to, okay, what can I do to make this better, to make this work, and it forced me to listen and, constantly put myself out there. It's all I can do is to say, hey, I'm here. And if you ever need anything, you call me, you text me, I'm here. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. I am always here to help guide you, rescue you, whatever you need. And they've always been able to get themselves to that place, to the place of that self-sovereignty. You know what I mean?
Are you feeling that?
Yeah. That's the feeling of it. So again, it's different for a mother than it is a father.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, the one thing that I don't know the exact quote, but it is, I didn't want my happiness dependent upon my children.
Yeah.
That was absolutely off the table.
No, it was something like the greatest weight that a kid has to bear is their parents' unfulfilled life. And that to me was the I will not do that, because I went through that. I watched my dad, and he met this person that he loved so much, who was, his person, and through addiction, lost her. And then I saw him struggle through life, and I saw him, in relationships to satisfy his kids, because he didn't know how to clothe us. He didn't know how to cook for us. He was a terrible cook. Everything, he just was a provider. He didn't know all these things. How do I go to work every day and then come home and feed these kids and do? He's like, I'm just exhausted. So I know the plight of a parent, father or mother. But I felt that my dad gave up some of his life because of me, you know what I mean? And my brother and my sister. And I didn't feel any kind of guilt or anything like that. But I remember as he was getting older, and he said, I put a little bit of money aside for you. And I would say, I don't want it.
I don't want your money. I want your happiness. Go fucking find your happiness. Dad, go on a cruise ship for 6 months and just sail around the world. Go see what you haven't seen. And I meant it. I swear I meant it because I knew, oh, dude, whatever you give me, I know I can go and make it. I know I have the availability to do that. So don't live for me. Find your happiness. That
aside from me, apart from me.
Yes, I want you to live your life. And watching, that was my mom. She would say the same thing. Don't worry about me. I'll figure it out.
Worries control.
And that's the one thing that I have said to my kids, and I ask them, are you happy? Number one, are you happy? Yes. And I always respond with that. I am too. So we're in such really good places, and we may not have this conversation every day. You may not come home and I'm there, but I'm where I need to be, and that's in your heart. And that door it's one of those restaurant doors, an Eliason door, honey, because I've installed them. It's a door that swings both ways. When you need me, the door swings into me. When I need you, it swings into you. And the only reason I need that is to just know that we're there for each other.
Yeah, I always loved this. This is something really great about my dad and I's relationships, because we could not talk for months.
I do love your dad.
And it's great. Like, there's no obligation. Our relationship is not out of obligation.
No obligation, yeah.
It's truly from just loving each other, and we don't need to talk every day to prove to each other that we love each other. We just know it's there. And when he feels it in his heart to reach out, he will, and he'll just send me a little, GIF or GIF or whatever the hell they're called, just saying, have a great day, I love you, and vice versa. And that really helped me a lot with, understanding that just because you're with a person every day doesn't mean you're present with them. And I think that's for the biggest thing I've learned is that, like he said, not being with my kids every day meant when I I talked to my daughter every day on the phone, but the first couple of years, it was 3 times a day on the phone every day. But I had to be so completely present in those moments because we didn't just see each other and take it for granted. And so it required absolute presence, and it required not allowing her the space to be unhappy. And to finish kind of what I was talking about with my appointment with Shafali, when she said, your daughter doesn't want you to fix it. She may not be able to tell you that, but she just wants you to be in the messiness with her. And so for a long time, I was like, well, because I'm spiritually enlightened now, and I'm becoming not the victim in my life, and I'm not blaming people for how I feel, and I'm confident now. And so I want to impart that onto my daughter so that she doesn't have to experience the same things I did. But this is the epitome, the crux of conscious parenting. When I'm doing that, when I'm saying I don't want her to have to experience what I did, I am still making it about me. I want everyone to hear that. I am still making her life about me and not actually seeing what she may need or what she may want. I'm doing it to try to avoid the pain that I felt. And so for a long time, it was when she would talk to me about her friends and issues, I would be like, well, you can't be a victim. Don't be a victim. They can't make you feel anyway. And I would impart this knowledge because, even though I was out there screaming conscious parenting and oh, don't put your own shit on your kids, here I'm doing the same thing, but with the cap of, oh, I'm spiritually enlightened. And really, I realized just a few months ago, I don't know if it was a moment or just whatever, but it was as I'm talking to her on the phone, there was a period where it was we were fighting a lot, and it was about these kinds of things. And what I realized was when actually I just allowed her to tell me the situation and be upset and not try to fix it or not try to tell her what she should or shouldn't be doing, to just literally sit with her in it and reaffirm to her, I understand, I get it. I would feel that way too. Within 2 minutes.
Well, because ultimately she wanted to know that you were there.
Exactly.
That's it. That's it.
That's all our kids want.
Yep.
That's all we want.
That's it.
That's all we want. And as I started practicing that more and more, it was really on our trip in Utah where there was just such a huge realization with, we went out skiing the first day, and she's frustrated because, you know, she's the youngest one there. Everyone's faster than her. She doesn't want to be the one that everyone's waiting for. And so, you know, she's crying and she's getting mad and she's all these things. And I'm like getting frustrated, right? Like, knock it off. Stop being so negative.
And I'm saying, wait, why do we do this?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Like, you know, be positive and all the things. And then the next day we go, and she and her friend didn't go, just us adults go. And here I am in this situation feeling like I'm holding everybody up. My feet are in pain. I'm cold and I just want to cry on the chairlift. I want to start crying. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, she actually just cried. I'm not mad at her because she's crying. I'm mad because I'm not letting myself cry. Yeah. Like, I want to throw the fit like she did. And it just hit me in a moment like, oh my God, she just wanted to express how she was feeling. And she just wanted me to allow her to express that instead of trying to change it. And, you know, after that day, it was like she was inviting me. This is what our children do. She invited me into, and then later on we were skiing down this hill and I stopped. They were all ahead of me. I stopped and I just bawled my eyes out for like a minute straight. I just freaking bawled, like that heaving, like, but what I was crying for was my 13-year-old self. I was like going, no, there's nothing wrong with you, to my 13-year-old self. No, you are perfect. Like you're okay to feel the way you feel. You're not a bad person for feeling the way you feel. There's nothing wrong with you ultimately. And she, you know, like you said, she teaches me every day. She is my biggest trigger and my biggest teacher because she is my biggest trigger, because she teaches me so much about these unhealed parts of myself that I thought in my spiritual growth, I had enlightened and evolved and sent to the light. And what I realized that there was still those pieces of me inside that was not allowing my 13-year-old self or 12-year-old self to just feel emotions and to just be upset. And so, you know, I think conscious parenting is exactly like Shefali said. Like, they don't want us to fix anything. They just want us to say, I get it. And you're right for how you feel. Yeah. And I'm right here alongside of you in the messiness, figuring it out on my own too. I'm just figuring it out.
Well, I think that's, you know, that kind of leads me to my summary to wrap this episode up here of what conscious parenting is to, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And when he was, I went to pick him up to bring him to, you know, my house for a party. And I said, so obviously he was concerned. And I said, so when are you done? Like, when have you've lived a good life? When are you done? He goes, well, when I don't know who you are, then I've had a good life. And, you know, and then fast forward a couple of years, and there we are in this nursing home. He would go there for a week to just kind of give my stepmom a break, because she did take care of him. And we're sitting across the table, we're having a conversation. All of a sudden he looks at me, he goes, hey, I remember you. And he said, you worked at, and we had, and I'm just like, what are you fucking talking about? Right? And then both of us in an instant realized what just happened. He forgot who I was. And that moment hit me like I was doing 80 and I just hit a fucking wall. Like, what do I do now? Because this is the code. So a couple days later, I went to see him, and he's laying in bed and in this nursing home, and it was, oh God, it was just horrible. But he's laying there, and we're having a conversation. He knew who he was and all that, who I was, and I said, it was a big breakdown moment for me to be not the strong son. And I said, you know, I've watched you make a lot of mistakes. And I have taken your successes as my own, and I built on them. So there really aren't any mistakes. There really aren't any failures, because you've taught me to take your failures and build on them and make them better. And here I am sitting with you, and arguably, who knows how much longer you have. And there's going to be a day when I'm in that bed, and my kids are going to be sitting where I'm at. And all I want them to tell me is this: thank you for giving me the opportunity to take what you had and build on it and make it better. By showing me those mistakes, I knew not to make them. By showing me your successes, I knew to move in that direction. For telling me that I could get up, that I could. And I said, and to me, ultimately, that's what conscious parenting is. They're not less than us. They're not better than us. They are us. Mm-hmm. Because we are the child, then we move to the parent, and there will be a day where each one of us will be laying in that bed, and our children will be surrounding us, and all we're going to want them to say is, thank you for making it. Thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. And no matter if right, wrong, greatest father, worst father, it's still got us to be the people that we are today. I am a direct result of all the parents that I've had, learning and watching the mistakes that they've made and learning from them. They have made me a better person. And all I can ask is that I do my best to give that to my kids. That is what I want to give to my kids. I want to give that moment to them. So that's my definition of conscious parenting.
So what is something that you think, what's a tool or some kind of a practice?
Let them fail.
Yeah.
Let them fall.
Yeah.
You're not hurting them by letting them fail and letting them fall. You're giving them their strength,
courage,
their solidarity, we all
They're
have that.
Themselves.
We all have that. We all have that strength.
When stuff's getting done for us, then
yes.
we don't have.
We don't have it if
that.
people are giving us that all the time. We don't
strength.
Listen. If you were back in the caveman days, and you were hungry, then you either did something like build fires or something and let the guys that were hunters or go out and hunt because they were really, really good at it. But if you just sat back and played video games in the cave and wondered where the hell's my meal at, you were starving. Right. You were going to fucking starve. And they would probably eat you.
Yeah.
Unless you were out there and giving something.
Yeah.
For the collective.
It's
right?
important to feel for your own growth and your own strength that you feel like you're contributing to the greater whole.
100%. Because then you're contributing to yourself.
Exactly.
Because now you know, well, if I needed to go out and kill a boar, I watch these guys enough. Yeah. I could go out there and kill a boar. Do I want to do that? No, I don't want to do that. But I know I can. I've watched that guy make fire enough that I know I could go over there and make fire. And you know what? Tonight I am. I'm going to make fire. You know? Well, I'm going to wash the dishes. I'll do whatever.
Ultimately, it's about them being able to build that self-trust.
It is. Self-esteem.
So self-esteem, confidence, and self-trust. So that they can go do scary things and take risks in their life.
Trust in themselves that I can handle this.
Exactly.
I can handle this. Because the moment we take our kids to that first day of first grade or kindergarten, right? That's when we hand them off and we say, okay, you got this.
Yeah.
And as a parent that has stood with their children, terrified, screaming, crying, there's no way I can leave them here. You have to. That was so hard, but I'll tell you, that lesson taught not only me, but it taught them too that they got it and they could do it.
Well, I want to give one last example before we say goodbye.
This has been long.
This has been. Well, you just keep talking.
I sat back for a long time, honey. I really did.
So I'm going to leave you with an example because this came up just actually like a couple weeks ago in my women's group, Authentic Life Blueprint, the program I run for women. And one of them shared, she said, I really need some help right now with conscious parenting and holding space because my daughter just moved back into the house. I think she's 25, 24 maybe. She just moved back into the house to save some money and, everything's going really great, but she broke up with her longtime partner. And of course we're all upset and sad too, because we got really attached after like 4 or 5 years. And she said, and I'm really struggling with not like, I want to tell her what to do. You know, I want to tell her these things. And she said, I guess I just haven't gotten down, you know, what holding space means. And please, can you, you know, help me with this? And this is like the epitome, right? Like, you see your child going through something, and the first thing that you want to do is like swoop in and go, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't be doing. This is how we feel. So you should be acting in a certain way to make us feel better. Right.
Yep.
And I told her, like, what if you just sat with her and said, I get it. I get you feeling that way, and you'll figure it out. And I'm right here next to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not even going to give you advice unless, of course, you ask. But other than that, I know that you got this. And I'm not going to let my own shit get in the way of that. I'm just going to sit here and hold your hand and allow you to be in the pain. And I'm going to be right here next to you while you go through that pain. And she was like, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what practicing this is can I just be with you in this space and not try to fix it for you? Because you can only do that when you can sit in your own pain and suffering and be okay, and learn how to self-soothe and learn that that pain and suffering is bringing growth. That's the only way you can do it with your children, is if you do it with yourself. And to me, that's what conscious parenting is about. So we will continue this conversation on the next episode, when Isiah is going to be sitting in between us, having his own mic, and he's going to be sharing his perspective.
I want him on the other side of you. I don't want him sitting next to me. I'm sorry.
He will be sharing his perspective, which, you know what, after 5 years.
No, it's amazing.
And I'm proud of myself, because the first couple years I couldn't even have this conversation in the public, because I was so scared of what people thought of
100%.
a mom that leaves her kids.
I think we all have.
Yeah. So it's going to be a full circle, and I'm really excited to do that. So that comes in part 2. This is part 1. Tell us in the comments, share with us, how do you practice conscious parenting? Do you practice conscious parenting? What does that look like for you in your household?
Sure.
What are some things that you're trying to get better at? Are you able to hold that space for your kids? Let us know in the comments. And then, of course, don't forget to do the liking and subscribing, because we want to share this with as many people as possible if they get some value.
Because why wouldn't they want to hear this voice?
The nonsense. So like and subscribe and click the bell, because even though we upload these every single Thursday at 5 p.m. every week, we know you have busy lives, and the Conscious Couple podcast isn't the first thing that's on your mind. So if you click the bell, it will let you know.
It's not the first thing on my mind. It's not the 10th thing that's on my mind.
No, it's
honestly.
really not.
But listen, this is the one thing I'll say to end this, and this will be over. Find something to laugh at yourself about. Find something that you do that you can laugh at yourself. Because honestly, if you can laugh at yourself, you can laugh at anything. And have the courage to laugh at yourself. And have the courage to call yourself dumb. I like to call myself dumb sometimes, because, as I have said many times, every guy that would come and work for me, I would say, I'm an asshole. And I said, now it's only up from here. Because I'm not an asshole, but now you think I am, so it's only going to be up from here. So, yeah.
And if you can't find anything else to laugh at, I don't know if you guys can hear Murphy over there.
He's just
like making the funniest, strangest sounds. I mean, seriously.
Quiet. Just let him. Where you at, bro?
I mean, come on.
I don't know if you guys could hear that.
Yeah, and the people who are listening, they can't see it. But anyway, okay. We love you all. Thank you for listening to us for an episode next week, part 2. See you then, guys.